Hi, I'm Tony Lacantro and I'm at the RIU Good Oil Conference. Hey Tino.
Hello Tony, how are you?
Good. Now, Bass used to be an Australian exploration company. Now I believe you are restructuring the business. So tell me about Bass.
We were an Australian explorer offshore in the Gippsland Basin, and through the downturn there was no business that could possibly be built for a small cap company as an offshore explorer. With there was no risk capital, and it was just a bad spot to be. And what we did is we restructured the company. Essentially, when I came on board in 2015, we basically took over the board. The current board took over the board. We recapitalised the company, and we bought a producing asset in Indonesia. And Indonesia is now our focus area. In fact, we've been operating there since for about 18 months. And Indonesia is a really, really interesting place to do business. And that's our growth focus and our growth area for the future.
I think it's a much maligned country, that Australian companies can actually go there and do good business, but everyone thinks about maybe corruption or issues getting money out. But it's one of the world's fastest growing economy, and I can just see eventually it'll boom. So I guess you're going in for the first mover advantage.
Yeah, it's interesting because through the downturn there was a lot of US money. A lot of capital has moved out of Indonesia through the downturn, particularly American companies repatriating money into the shale plays, essentially, that they're comfortable with in a lower risk environment, if you want to call it that. But Indonesia is a remarkable growth opportunity. There have been a number of historical circumstances where mining companies rather than oil companies have had some problems in Indonesia, and that's probably what investors or what people have comes to mind when they think about resources in Indonesia. But the oil industry is a very, very different industry. It's very heavily regulated. It's a well understood industry, and certainly there's nothing like what's happened in the minerals industry happened in the oil industry. And as you mentioned, with an economy that's growing at 5.5% per annum, and they are now importers of oil, they really need to promote companies and put in fiscal levers that will attract capital back in to the oil industry. And specifically with Australia, Australia through the previous Prime Minister and now the current Prime Minister.
Which one? There's been about 7.
Yes.
Which one?
Malcolm Turnbull particularly has promoted a really, really strong relationship with Indonesia and a personal relationship with President Jokowi, who's still very popular in Indonesia. And now Scott Morrison, his first overseas trip, a minute and a half after taking the chair, went over to sign a bilateral trade agreement that has been in negotiation with Australia and Indonesia for quite some time. So the ties between Australia and Indonesia are only getting stronger. So we, along with the prospectivity that we see in Indonesia, as well as the relationship, we think that it's a great place to be. First mover advantage is in essence what we're banking on. And there are other things that I can elaborate on in a moment that we feel makes Indonesia a great spot to be.
So how do you intend to grow in Indonesia?
Okay, Tony, that's an interesting question. So what we find in Indonesia, and again this is with the asset that we acquired a full Indonesian crew. Our operating office is in Jakarta. Our field office, of course, is in central Sumatra. And it's the relationships that we're building with locals, with Indonesian business people that have good relationships with the regulator and with business folk and government departments. It's through those relationships that we are getting access, and we are seeing fantastic opportunities in the deal flow. For example, We've screened, over the last 6 months, we've screened, my guess is over 40 opportunities, and we're keeping a live, long list of around about 10 opportunities at any one time. And we've got a short list of 3 or 4 opportunities that we're actively in offer and acceptance mode at the moment. And I'm really confident with the quality of the assets we're seeing, with the quality of the people that we're dealing with, that there's a great future for bass in Indonesia.
I think from an investment perspective, you are trading at 0.3%, which is about as penny dreadful as it gets. How do you intend to climb out of this predicament in the medium term?
Well, I wouldn't call it a predicament. It's part of a staged growth plan, because when we took the reins at Bass, there was a recapitalisation strategy that we had in mind. We exited all the high-risk exploration acreage. We've now got a producing asset in South Sumatra that is a very good one for us as a foundation asset. We are very actively screening new business to acquire new properties in Indonesia. Once we build that portfolio, which is through the balance of 2018 and 2019, once we build the portfolio, get some balance in the business, people see that the business is actually strong and getting stronger. One of the jobs on my to-do list is to restructure the shareholding base.
It is pretty ugly.
It is ugly, and for us to become an attractive investment grade investment, if you will, that's one of the things we have to do. Another thing on my to-do list is, again, our shareholding is 90-something% Australian New Zealand shareholders, and there are a lot of old Bass, offshore Bass Strait people, investors that have been in the stock for some time. We are consciously looking to diversify our shareholder base into Asia, and these are all part of the rebuilding plans, and this will all come with time. I'm very, very happy and very confident that our plan to move us forward and grow in Indonesia is being executed. We're ticking off one box at a time, and we'll sort those issues out too.
Great story, Tino. Thank you.
Thank you.